Welcome into the show. It is Daniel Workman coming to you live from the Dreamadginate Sports Studios. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. This is your 6 a.m. super early morning wake-up call and all time zones in between and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Each and every weekday, we appreciate it so much. Look, this week, with everything going on in our world, we decided to focus the show really on one subject. There's a lot of things going on, leagues coming back with restart dates and so many different things. But with what's going on in America, what's going on in the world, the support that we have seen from players like Weston McKennie and others in the Bundesliga last weekend, in regards to the societal and cultural issues facing America, I just felt it was necessary to do my part to shine a light on some aspects of American soccer that, we talk about on this show. We talk about them regularly on the show, and we talk about them from a macro level a lot of the time. We talk about opportunity. We talk about access. We talk about sporting merit and allowing your work to be the key that unlocks the gate. Not your bank account, not, who you know, but what you can do on the field, what you can do in the leadership of your club, the leadership of your team, etc. And so looking at where we are in American soccer, I just felt like we needed to take a week and do some things that we haven't done before. And that was and is to dig into some of these societal issues about opportunity and access when it comes to minorities. Now, minorities are not the only ones who struggle with opportunity and access. There are a lot of situations where we don't have enough women involved in leadership. We have situations where it is a purely socioeconomic issue. How much money is in your bank account? But this week, we have been looking at opportunity and access specifically as it pertains to race and the color of your skin. Dr. King was a big hero of mine. I will never forget visiting the Civil Rights Museum in Montgomery, Alabama, and seeing what he and so many others did for our country. Their courageous struggle for justice and for dignity and for respect. And his words in his speeches have always stuck with me. They've inspired me, and they've really shaped a lot of things in my life. And one of those surrounds this idea that we should judge each other not by how we look, the color of our skin, but instead by the content of our character. That what we do is what should matter. It's very similar to a message that we talk about on the show, sporting merit, access based on what we do, not who we know, not the color of our skin. And this week we have been digging into these issues, and we've talked to several people who are players, people who have been coaches, people who have run clubs and leagues, about their efforts to provide more access and more opportunity to people of color. On today's show, we are going to have Daryl Marcel join us to talk about some of his experiences and shed some light on his past and his present and what he hopes as a better future for American soccer tomorrow. We first met Daryl. I first met Daryl at the Phoenix AGM in 2019. This was the U.S. Soccer annual general meeting, and Daryl was there, and we got to talking, and we had him on a special series of podcast episodes when we were still running Soccer Works as our main podcast before we launched this show. And it was Soccer Works Roundtable Edition live at the bar of the U.S. Soccer AGM, and he was one of our featured guests that we had in that series. And so I wanted to reach out to him. It's been a little bit over a year, and catch up with him and find out what what's going on in his world, and also pick his brain about his experience and his thoughts. I've met people like him. I've met people like a good friend of mine, Kefren Fuller, who we've had on the show several times. I've had others like James Myers, who has also been on the show, and we've become friends. And I've talked to countless others, friends of mine who are African Americans, who are lawyers and entrepreneurs, dreamers, planners, doers, who all want to see things change and see things improve and provide not just opportunity for themselves or their dreams, but opportunities for everyone. An equal opportunity playing field, an equal opportunity environment. And that's really what we're talking about in American soccer. And the big issue is that our systems are not set up with proper representation. We've had Doug Andreessen on the show recently, and he has talked about this issue a lot because he was on the diversity task force with U.S. Soccer and spoke about how much there was missing in the room. Representation. Latinos, African Americans, and so many others not represented. If you look at American soccer at large and you go to a U.S. Soccer AGM, what you're going to find is that the majority of the crowd are in their 50s and above, and they're white. We have turned this sport into a country club sport. We don't want loud parents, and we don't want screaming kids, and we don't want hysteria because we're afraid we'll hurt someone's feelings. We want the golf clap. We don't want excitement because it creates stress. Now, I'm not advocating for stupidity. I'm not advocating for detrimental behavior. But have we gone too far? Have we ripped the essence and the soul of the sport out of this country in organized soccer? I think in many cases and in many ways we have. Instead of properly channeling a parent's support of their child in a positive way, we've just shut them down. We've asked them to stay away or to stay in their cars or to sit further away or be quiet, rather than find ways to channel that energy and passion and support that not only is beneficial for their own son or daughter, but also contributes to the whole. We've got to start thinking of our clubs as members of the community, member organizations of the community. And if they're a member organization of the community, then they need to look like the community. I'm not saying it's got to be exact. If you've got 60% white and 40% minority, that your club needs to be 60% and 40% minority to be accurate, to be a good organization striving for diversity, striving for community representation. But if you are existing in a community where there is diversity and you've only got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of your club being players of color, we're not doing it right. And we're certainly not doing it well. Folks like Daryl and Kef and James and so many others are trying to do great work. They want to do what's right, not just by kids that look just like them, but by all kids and for all kids. But the point of this is that we've got to do better for every kid. We look at inner cities and we look at suburbia and we look at rural areas and we look at socioeconomic stratification where you have those who are very wealthy who are most likely to have access to the highest levels of American soccer, and those who don't have as much in their bank account who are not able to afford to pay to play at the highest levels. Scholarships alone aren't good enough. It is better than nothing. But how impactful would it be if you're a young black girl or a young black boy or Latino or Latina walk up to a soccer field and see a coach or a director or a president of a club that looks like you? It goes a long way, and leadership matters. I'm not advocating that we have to hard code into every single organization some type of racial means test in order to be qualified as a good board of directors or a good director of coaching. But just like our club makeup of players should have some similar look and feel to the community from a representation standpoint, our leadership needs that as well. From the highest levels of our boardroom at U.S. Soccer down to the lowest levels in our communities, we've got to do better. We've got to go farther. We've got to correct what has been an issue for far too long. It's not enough to make speeches. We have to do the dirty work, the tiresome, frustrating, awkward work. We've got to be committed and relentless in performing that work. But eventually, like we talked about with Chris Kessel the other day, you can reach a tipping point where those families and players begin to buy into your club, into your organization. They see that you are for real, that you are authentic, and that you care, and that you're compassionate, and that you actually do want what's best for them. And they become advocates. They become cheerleaders, ambassadors. They become evangelists for your organization, and they go back to their network of friends and family and businesses. And now your club becomes more and more like your community. It becomes not only more and more like the community in the way that you look, but also in the roots of your community. There's much more depth to the relationships in your community. But that requires us to do this hard work. And it's not always fun. It's not always easy, but it is necessary. I have said this before, and I will say it again. I believe that the United States of America could be the greatest soccer country on earth if we try. We're not trying right now. We're not doing enough right now. And we're never going to do enough until we make access and opportunity a level playing field. That regardless of your socioeconomic status or the color of your skin, you're welcome here. You're welcome to grow and thrive here. We're not here to make special exceptions or exemptions or provide token opportunities, but we become globally accepting of everyone and let their work as a soccer player, their work as a scout, their work as a coach or as an administrator or as an executive speak for itself. That's when we begin to move in the direction of becoming the greatest soccer country on earth. We're never going to win the World Cup with our current system. This new academy is the same as the old academy until access becomes based on sporting merit. Until then, we've got these mega clubs with private access to a league, and we're not providing pathways. One of the things I appreciate about guys like Daryl and Kef is they are out there doing the work. You know, when I first met Kef, I reached out to him because I connected with him through Twitter, and I just said, hey, look, I'm thinking of starting a non-pay-to-play club. This is a free-to-play club. I'm not looking to make any money on this. I'm going to volunteer all of my time. In fact, I'm probably going to have to end up bankrolling some of this out of my companies to make this work. But I want to do a social experiment. I want to try to provide an opportunity and a pathway to kids who are not involved in the sport, especially in an organized way. And so we set out to do that. And I reached out to Kef, knowing what he had been doing in the DC area and discovering that through social media, and said, hey, I'd love to just pick your brain and ask some questions. He was one of the first coaches that was doing something that I'd ever seen or heard that was similar to something that I wanted to do. And so he was awesome. We got on the phone and we talked, and we just went back and forth on ideas, and he was telling me what he was doing, and I was telling him what I was thinking, and back and forth we went, and this relationship began. We need more of that kind of spirit in this country that's welcomed in the boardrooms, that's welcomed in the conventions and at the annual general meetings and in the committees. People who are rolling up their sleeves and putting in their own sweat equity and wanting to build a dream, they should be welcomed. They should be accepted. And their work should be the key that unlocks the door to their access. And that's what this week's shows have all been about. And I'm looking forward to having Daryl on the show in just a few minutes to dig into his experiences and his thoughts on the subject. But before we do, our sponsor this half hour is Ductic Brand, DUKTIG brand.com, ducticbrand.com. And this is a great company. And it was created by a couple former players, but not just former players, former female players. These are female players who play the game, love the game, coach the game, work in the game. And they wanted to do something with a dream, and they created ducticbrand.com. You should check them out today. Place your order. Use promo code DWShow. You'll get 10% off of that order today at ducticbrand.com. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back into the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, we are joined by Daryl Marcel, who was on the show a little over a year ago. We met up at the AGM out in Arizona, the 2019 AGM. Had a chance to chat with him, and it was actually part of a series of Soccer Works kind of roundtable editions before the precursor for this show. So this is the first official appearance for Daryl on the show with us, and we're happy to have him on. He's the technical director of Borussia Dortmund's International Academy in Washington State. Daryl, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm pretty good, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I told you before we started recording, you got a great outfit, great setup there.
Yeah.
It's a cool look, and Dortmund is the club in Germany that I like to root for. So it's really cool that you're connected with this project there in Washington State. Before we get into some of the other things I want to get to in terms of current affairs and some of the theme of the shows this week, tell us a little bit about the story of Borussia Dortmund and their International Academy project here in the U.S.
Well, first, let me say one of the greatest things about Borussia Dortmund is that for a German club, they're ranked first for anti-racism in all of Europe, right? And talking with these guys and getting to know them, and I'm talking about not American guys, I'm talking about the Germans themselves. It's just been a unbelievable experience. They basically, like everyone else, I would take it, have realized that America's a hotbed of talent. You know, we have tons of athletes here that play multiple sports. But soccer, they're seeing that in the last couple of years, you know, when I say couple, I mean like the last 10 years, they've been having players there, from the U.S. training and doing different things in their academy. And they realize that we have talent, but they need to tap into this talent. And their first brand was out in Texas. And it's just grown, in the last 2 years, where other affiliate clubs and organizations are coming in to be part of this BVB family. It's I've been in the soccer game, as you know, for years. I've had affiliations with Chelsea. I had affiliation with Roma, and this is a completely different feeling. It's more like of a family feel, Every other day, I'm on a call from someone in Germany, whether it be one of their academy coaches or, one of their technical directors, one of their goalkeepers that won the World Cup that's in there working with the kids this week, So it's tons of information that I've never had the privy to obtaining, to be able to tap these different resources and different coaches to be able to enhance my skill as a coach, So I feel blessed to be, with everything going on, to still have this opportunity to be part of one of one of the top clubs in the world. So, they went to Texas, like I said, and one of the DOCs, well, actually two of the DOCs there, I was working with the Trinidad and Tobago women's national team, and we were screening players throughout the U.S. And what I was doing is trying to touch base with different DOCs that I knew within the U.S. to see if they can host a combine for us to try and find talent, because we were preparing for World Cup Olympic qualifications. So in going into Texas, I got the privilege of meeting a guy named Peter Brody, who made the whole connection with Borussia Dortmund, and had opened his facility for a buddy of mine who's a DOC there. His name is Colin Rock, and basically in talks with them, they're like, hey, this is the first year that we're establishing this relationship with Borussia Dortmund. We were with Liverpool for, I think, something like 10 years. And Dortmund flew them out and showed them the setup, and the rest is basically history. From there, I think there's like 7 affiliates in Texas, which Texas is a big state, obviously, right? So between Houston and Dallas, there's like 7 different locations. There's one in White Plains, there's one in New Jersey, now one in Washington. They're talking about New York and North Carolina, I think, next. But it's a great opportunity to learn from some of the best. And it's basically a different experience because you're actually in touch and engaged with. And I guess because of what we're going through right now, you have to be engaged, like how we're doing now, Zoom. So I
Right.
can be on a call with, like, we had, the World Cup winning goalkeeper. Forgive me, I can't remember his name, but he's with Dortmund now. And we had 97 goalkeepers throughout the U.S. on a call talking to them, asking them questions and, interacting with the kids and, being able to ask personal stuff like via text, through the Zoom call, and he's answering it. And it's just these opportunities are the things that you want to create in an atmosphere for kids to develop and learn. And as a kid, I never really had that trying to aspire to be a player. So if I can create opportunities for the kids in my community to actually do this, then, great. You know what I mean? It's just a blessing. I can't say that I did it, on my own. I think a big part of what's going on here in the state goes to my best friend. Actually, his name is Sheldon Daniel. While I was away on national team duty and a whole bunch of things were going on here in the state, he actually followed up and, made the actual connection. So by the time I came back, things were really in place for us to step in, and get this opportunity with Dortmund. So.
And when a player is involved in one of these connected clubs to the Dortmund Academy, and obviously Dortmund in Germany, what are some, you mentioned some of the Zoom and interactive aspects from a player development, training, whether it's curriculum, support, what have you. What are some things that you've seen so far that you like in terms of what Dortmund's trying to do to tap into the American market in terms of improving player development and providing maybe some opportunity that wasn't there before?
Well, the biggest thing that I realize is, like I said, is support. So they're actually sharing what they're doing in Germany with the kids, like what we're supposed to be doing at a certain age and what they're specifically looking for, right? They've set up different outlets and like, Zoom meetings, and you can go on there, you get access to plans that you can go on to train, that you really wouldn't get anywhere else. I haven't experienced it like that. Like I said, I was with several different clubs, and you'd get some information, but you wasn't getting all the information.
Right.
In my opinion, it was more, name branding than anything else, right? Uh, and that's okay too, because that's part of the industry that we live in, right? But if you're looking in terms of development, for me, the biggest difference was how much information they were giving us and how helpful they were to us, and how eager they were to learn the difference between the American kids and the German kids. Because unlike like the Germans, don't have that many sports accessible like we do here. 13, 14 sports the kids are playing here. Germany, they're playing 3 or 4, and they decide at a pretty young age what they really want to do. It's more serious because it's really a world sport for them, right? So developmentally, they have a strict regimen of what you're supposed to, and it's supposed to be what's changing my way of coaching a little bit, and it sounds funny, is that they're more laid back, you know, and I can be intense sometimes. To be honest with you, as a coach, sometimes you try to push your kids and get the best out of them, so you give them some tough love, as they call it. But the Germans are everything's a game. It becomes a game. Now it's a serious atmosphere, but it's more game like, so that when you're upset, they know you're upset. Kind of thing, where it's not like the same way that you're coaching the whole time. It's always fun, it's always interactive, but their tone and how their body language, I'm learning more of the body language of the Germans. And if you watch most German coaches when they coach on the field, they're not yelling and screaming a lot. For the most part, it's you watch Cole from them, they're on the sideline, they make a little adjustments, they fuss at their bench, but on the field they're very calm. And when they lose it, that players know to react, kind of thing. I don't know if it's a good thing, but it's a different way of me seeing how to coach, because you know, whatever sport you play in America, unless you grew up in the last 15 years, coaches used to be in your face yelling and screaming at you. I don't know what you remember,
Right.
but
Right.
we can't do that stuff now, right? But
Right.
our generation, coaches smoked on the field. It was a whole different era. And now it's more structured, which is good. There are guidelines, but we all had that coach that yelled and screamed in our face, spit when they were talking, and you don't want that. So I think it's great that, for me as a coach, learning a different way of seeing how to coach younger kids. The philosophies and stuff for the older age are pretty different as well, because if the Germans play forward, they go backwards once and everything's forward, where other countries knock the ball around and they go long, they're going forward. They want to attack. And it's different. It's a different way of learning a system of play, or the same system of play, but a different way of playing it. So it keeps me hungry in the game, and it's probably something that you needed at this time in my career as a coach. I had the opportunity to coach to be one of the assistants on the women's Trinidad and Tobago national team, and that experience was great for me too. Learning at that level, what's required and what to look for, and then you come back home, and now I'm engulfed with all this information from one of the top international clubs in the world. So, I'm like a sponge right now, because I'm sitting home getting fat and trying to figure out ways to reinvent the wheel right now, and I don't
Right.
really do that. So it's just been a great experience with them. It's been a great experience. I think the clubs that and the kids that are part of the Dortmund International USA project are really going to get something different, something new. And I'm excited about it. So, and I don't get excited that often, man,
Right.
Like I said, I'm a kind of serious guy, right? Most of the time. But yeah.
So, when we talked before, we were talking a little bit about kind of your past and your background and kind of, your personal story. And I wanted to kind of get into, some of the societal issues we're seeing, and really talking through some of these in, I think kind of a deep dive in some ways about the American soccer landscape and ecosystem, and really how that, what we're seeing right now in culture and society and in the news, really kind of hitting the forefront and really captured, I think, global attention. We've even seen some Dortmund players,
Yeah.
standing up in solidarity,
Yeah.
and really kind of making a statement, and not coming from American players. These are, foreign players that play for the club that recognize this is a kind of a big
Yeah.
watershed moment, in American politics, but also in a global sense.
Yeah.
And really one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk to you about is a little bit of some of your experiences in navigating the professional landscape for you, whether coaching, professional opportunities, etc. How has that process been for you? Do you feel like that it's been a struggle at times? Do you feel like it's been harder, in terms of your experience so far, to kind of navigate through the American soccer system, with not being, a white guy in their 50s or 60s, as you saw at the AGM in Arizona? I mean, it was like 95% 50s and above white people, basically running American soccer. A bunch of boardrooms look the same. Clubs in a lot of cases look the same. And so, how has that been for you, kind of navigating this professional journey?
It's been a journey, and it's been a struggle. But it's also been rewarding at times. It hasn't all been bad, but you know, you see, when you saw me in Arizona, I had a different hairstyle, didn't I? right? So what you wouldn't know about me is that I was dread for like 16 years. And 10 years ago, as a coach, when I started coming up as a coach, I think I had my B license at that time, I cut my dreads. And in cutting my dreads, just my social appearance publicly um, opened up more doors for me, if that makes sense to you, right? Um, no one ever asked me to cut my hair or anything like that, but they didn't have to, But as soon as my hair was cut, you know, um, more opportunities came for me, and from that, I'm here in Seattle. I left, Maryland, Virginia, D.C. area, and now I'm in Seattle. And when I came out to Seattle, I was like the first Black DOC of a club, of a major club here. So it was a whole different shift from East Coast to West Coast one. But I think the journey prior coming here was a difficult one. I was mentored by Bill Hamid's dad, Sully Hamid, and he had the first Black-owned club, and everyone thought he was crazy. Even me, looking on the outside, coaching for a bigger club, looking at this guy, I'm like, the first guy to actually pull me in and kind of teach me. He's like, yo, I'm going to teach you because some of these guys are not going to teach you. Right? They're going to watch you do the wrong thing, and you're not going to become a better coach from it. So you need to come work with me. And it took me, a year before I got the message. I was still watching them from across the field, and and it benefited me because there were different coaches, Hispanic coaches, there were white coaches, but they're all for themselves, more or less. You know what I mean? The English guys had their clique, the white American guys had their clique, the Spanish guys had their clique, and Black coaches is not something quite often, depending on your demographic and where you live. Or high-level Black coaches at that. You know what I mean? So for a long time, I think now it's better because a lot more of us, after we finished playing college or whatever, we started obtaining licenses, getting involved in the game. But it's still hard. I can give you an instance. It's not basically me, but one of my good friends is an MLS coach, and he has a mere diploma to give in the U.S. He's one, I think, guy in the U.S. obtains this license, and he can't get a head job in the MLS. This is something when we were at that AGM when we met. A buddy of mine sat down and was asking how more people of running teams or opportunity to coach, be, a long conversation, back with Kobe saying to me, he worked, he's a national team for some, oh, you could identify him from play all the way to national career. He does a job. I'm low totem pole, and it's been whether it be parents, your accent, in cases, if I was a Black guy, I may get in terms of open is because the accent. You know? I'm a happy and but it's tough, man. It's self that I've been able to um educate kids on the college and on. If we think